been here in the period 94 to 99. He was a senior fellow at the NMML, Professor Kancha Ilaiah. Before I formally welcome him, just a few announcements. Tomorrow on 17th April, Thursday, we have Miss Madhavi Desai from Center for Environmental Planning and Technology, University, Ahmedabad, in the Cities in History series, speaking on women in the city, the case of Ahmedabad. On the 19th of April, that is Saturday, there is a full-day workshop on Nehru's World. You are all most welcome. There are many speakers. It commences at 9 a.m. Dr. Chandrasekhar Das Gupta from the Energy and Resources Institute, Dr. Pallavi Ragan from Center for Policy Research, Dr. C. Rajamohan from the Observer Research Foundation, Mr. Shivshankar Menon, National Security Advisor, and Dr. Srinath Raghavan from the Center for Policy Research. On 21st April, which is Monday, there is a panel discussion in Hindi, Vibhajan or Hindi Upanyas, and the speakers are Professor Manager Pandey, formerly at JNU, and Professor Vasudha Dalmia. This has been postponed till further notice, so we will hold it, but at a later date because one of the speakers is not able to make the journey to be in Delhi. On 23rd April, which is Wednesday, we have a public lecture in the India and Transition series. Professor Chandan Gowda of the Azim Premji University, who will be speaking on Kannada activism in Bangalore. On 24th April, Thursday, we have another lecture in Cities in History. Distinguished scholar, Professor Janaki Nair of JNU, speaking on the city is history, new Indian urbanisms and the terrain of the law. And Friday next week, on the 25th, we have a seminar, Dr. Stig Toft Madsen, Nordic Institute of Asian Studies, Denmark, on the Karnataka farmers' movement in 1999, scaling up or remaining rooted. There are many publications brought out by the NMML in the occasional paper series. So far, 81 have been published. 73 of these are available in soft copy on our website, www.nehrumemorial.nic.in. The hard copies are available outside. They have nominal price of 100 rupees each. And the recent ones include in the History and Society series, K. Satyanarayana, The Politics of Caste and Identity in Contemporary South India. In Perspectives in Indian Development, Dr. Anuradha Kalan, The Possibility of Stimulating Inclusive Growth. Samaj Evam Itihas series, Narendra Shukla, Bharatiya Swatantrata Andolan or Pratibandhit Sahitya. It's a great privilege to welcome back Professor Kancha Ilaiah. We were just recalling that in the 90s, one of his first very well-known lectures in Delhi, Why I Am Not a Hindu, was delivered here in our Tuesday seminar series. In fact, it was in the annex, which is adjacent to this building. And during his fellowship, he gave several lectures, another one of which, if I recall correctly, was in this very room. Today, Professor Ilaiah will be speaking on Is Production Pollution? Interrogating Spiritual Justice. Professor Ilaiah is presently at the Maulana Azad National Urdu University. For a long period, he was associated with the Osmania University, where he was professor. He also served as head of the Department of Political Science. There are very few scholars who raise issues of such central importance to social, political transformation, not only in the academic sphere, but also in terms of the larger public platform as Professor Ilaiah. I'm especially happy that he has found time to be here today, despite the fact he has often a very heavy schedule. Oh, that's okay. And I'm sure you'll find today's lecture both stimulating and provocative. Is Production Pollution? Interrogating Spiritual Justice? Professor Kancha. How much time? What, 45 minutes? Then we'll have.
Thank you, Dr. Mahesh Rangarajan, for inviting me to share my views in this series of interrogating social justice in Tinmurti Memorial Library, where I was a fellow from 1994 to 97. In fact, that was a very important period for me to engage myself with the nationalist scholarship and look at the Dalit Bahujan issue around that. And it is from that my book, The Weapon of the Other, which was published by Pierce and Longman has come out. So thanks once again for inviting me. Now, this is a sort of new area even for me, though I did some related work while I was working on my book called Post-Hindu India, where I looked at the spiritual systems versus production in a sequential manner in the caste hierarchy. Now, after Professor Angarajan asked me to give this lecture, I thought it should be done in a way I can examine some of the ideas that I have been formulating in my mind. So the way I titled it was Production as Pollution. Now, is production pollution is one dimension of the issue, but production, if it has already become a pollution, then how to look at this production becoming a pollution in a spiritual domain. So it is from this point of view that I'll interrogate the whole issue of spiritual justice. I have a small note in order to make certain theoretical formulations rather clear. I'll just read that first and then elaborate on each one of the points. There are two ways to approach this topic. One, what is the place of production in spiritual systems of India in our contemporary times? Second, to look at the place of production in the spiritual systems from ancient days, which can be examined only based on the spiritual texts of India. It could be the Hindu Vedic texts or the Buddhist texts. Ancient have only two types. I want to construct an argument around the spiritual practices that are in operation in India in our times. I don't want to go to texts and see what is there in the discourses of text in relation to production. The first major theoretical point is that the civil societal relationship is based on the spiritual system that one is located in. Either directly or indirectly, the spiritual culture that got imbibed into the human persona continues to play a cultural role in human beings' day-to-day life. The most common sense example is the food cultural behavior of individuals. In India, the food cultural behavior of individuals is not shaped up by the individual's choice, but by systemic training of family and caste culture. In molding the caste culture, religion plays its own role. The role of choice in our behavioral pattern is very little. If religion molds the cultural behavior without any intervention of caste culture, as let us say Buddhism, Christianity, Islam do, in a broad sense, such a culture contains certain universal characteristics. Caste culture, on the other hand, fragments human beings' cultural life. So universality is certainly not there, because you can't apply this cultural behavior to the world. For example, the Brahman Baniya vegetarianism, the Shudra meatarianism, and the Muslim Dalit beefarianism are evolved over time based on the spiritual cultural influences. Caste also does not allow the human imagination to grow beyond a point. The secular individual or groups that we encounter in our day-to-day life are structurally rooted in some spiritual system or the other. Because there is nothing like a secular without some spiritual base or the other in India. Once certain values are internalized, particularly at the stage of childhood formation, they continue to hang on. Based on these general cultural evolutionary practices, I will try to look at the Indian spiritual cultures in relation to production and socio-spiritual justice. In my view, social justice is conditioned by the notion of spiritual justice. The whole notion of social justice is conditioned by the structural format of spiritual justice. But so far, spiritual justice has not become an area of serious scrutiny. In India, Hinduism reserves spiritual power positions like the temple priest, head of matas, recognized Hindu matas, for Brahmins. All major temples and established matas are institutionally controlled by them. Similarly, for a long time the right to do business was reserved for banyas. The right to do business got expanded only after Islam and Christianity began to interact with the socio-economic life of castes and communities that were living outside the market economy. There were caste markets, but they were very localized. In Indian Islam, Christianity, Buddhism, and Sikhism, persons from productive communities can reach to the highest position and take up priesthood of any level. There is a fundamental difference in spiritual cultures between Hinduism and other religions, which has huge implication to social relations of people. Ideologically, Hinduism treats production as spiritually polluting process. In other religions, the process of production and the human involvement in production have clean and unclean assessments, but production as a process is not untouchable. Once human relations with the idea of God are conditioned with that notion that production is pollution, the entire civil society gets deformed. Human labor has two components. One, production with an intensive engagement with nature. Second, the distribution of that production up to the level of human consumption. The spiritual agency, though operates at the level of distribution and consumption, its philosophical moorings have economic influence on production also. So there are philosophical influences, and those influences operate on everyday basis. Once production and productive labor are seen as pollution, the distribution process of production also becomes socially unjust. This is very, very important. Once production and productive labor are seen as pollution, the distribution process of production also becomes socially unjust. Social justice, therefore, is not an independent idea or category. It is a complex, multidimensional category with deep relationship with spiritual system of given people. In the spiritual society, the priest assumes a very critical role. He can command as to which section of the society should get bigger share and also better goods and commodities at the level of consumption. Priest position is not apolitical, and it is not a commanding position. It is a very political commanding position. There is an overarching ideological authority in the institution of priesthood that communicates about the modes of knowledge that the subject should receive. The priests, for example, in Hinduism, live a life of material gains. Now, these material gains, the process of material gains are systematically imbibed into spiritual practices. The Sanskrit words, which occur invariably in every mantra, whether it is of marriage or death ceremony or child birth ceremony, any other ceremony, the Sanskrit words that Hindu priests use in every ritual mantra, like samarpayami, is give away, and swaha, eat off, are not disconnected from material process of life. So both samarpayami and swaha have a material relationship for the gain of the priest. There is a common sense decoding of these two words that the Hindu priests deploy in every ritual among lower castes who happen to be the victims of this deployment. Through the first expression, samarpayami, the priest seeks to accumulate wealth by manipulating spiritual legitimacy. So he asked for samarpayami, rice samarpayami, vegetable samarpayami, ghee samarpayami, all the full-scale food, he asked for samarpayami. And there is a legitimacy in that samarpayami process. By deploying the second word swaha, highly legitimate consumerist mechanisms are deployed. So the consumerism is inside, but it is spiritually legitimated, deployed. Both these notions are deployed at the end of non-communicative and crowded mantra recitation that does not make sense for subjects around. The mantra speed, it is aeroplane speed. So nobody knows what that crowded words are saying. Bride and bridegroom don't even know whether he is asking them to live together, divorce tomorrow, or who should live with whom. But the words samarpayami and swaha are fundamentally linked up into this whole process. Crowded mantra recitation that does not make sense for subjects around, both by the speed of recitation and as well as its non-communicable language. Because gods know only Sanskrit and he knows only Sanskrit. People don't know that, are not supposed to know. And that is where the accumulative process through non-communicable language of samarpayami is accepted. So in India, this process of non-communicability and surrender are always interlinked. If you don't understand something which is absolutely bad lecture, that is a great lecture. But samarpayami and swaha have interconnectivity with looting and eating. That samarpayami and swaha have interconnectivity with looting and eating, process of material resources that are produced and circulated by the productive communities themselves. It is these productive communities themselves produce, circulate. The Brahmins and Banyas don't even circulate. They come to the place only at the consumption level. The best has to come there. And God helps. If that does not reach, God treats that as adharma. Then these gods have weapons in the hands. So they deploy weapons for killing and saying that the dusta is punished and the sister who is supposed to consume is protected. So he has to get everything in time. Morning breakfast, lunch and dinner. So this process is on. The Shudra common sense is capable of understanding the wealth accumulative process at work even in the villages as to how the mantra recitations are used for manipulating the social forces that are denied of social and spiritual justice. So now the Shudra forces are coming up with a knowledge frame that we are beginning to understand this whole process. As of now, 5 major spiritual systems are in operation in India. The Hindu, the Muslim, Christian, the Sikh and Buddhist. I have listed them in the order of their control over the number of people. The first major civil societal organization that human beings began to encounter was spiritual congregation. In recorded history, the Buddhist Sangha was the first ever such a spiritual social organization. The Sangha philosophy instituted the notion sramik, that is part of the high moral and ethical society. Obviously, before the Sangha system was established, the ancient Vedic system already institutionalized the principle of production as pollution. See, when I am using production as pollution, it is already systemic. It is not the question. It's not the question where is production pollution. No, production is already pollution. But at consumption level, it becomes pure. At production level, it is pollution. You are not supposed to till. You are not supposed to harvest. Harvesting is defined in Hindu language as violence. Therefore, you don't commit that violence. Somebody else has to harvest. And somebody else distribute it. Your pure act starts only at consumption level. Now that is where they look at the priest's body, how bulky it is. At any temple you see, any open temple, I mean it is solid, and most of them die with heart attack only. The Hindu ideology institutionalized caste with the basic premise that those who interact with production process should remain outside the realm of God itself. That is the critical area. So you can't even go to the realm of God and can't directly talk to Him, and therefore that God is made to be a God of one language, which does not exist in the world now. But it exists between the priest and the God, and that realm is completely away for the entire productive communities. The notion of God in Hinduism is more of political rather than spiritual. The very notion of God in Hinduism is political. It is not spiritual. The productive caste do not know as to how to engage with Hindu gods, because the gods themselves are said to be the source of spiritual philosophy that construct production as pollution. Because it is God who constructed that philosophy. Take for example Saraswati. Saraswati is goddess of education. And first of all, as I said in Why I Am Not a Hindu, she herself is illiterate. And she is goddess of education. Even that notional education, she was not supposed to give to SC, ST, OBCs. She was not supposed to distribute education. She was supposed to reserve it to Brahmins and Banyas and Kshatriyas. For a long time, for only Brahmins. The goddess of wealth, Lakshmi, poor woman, she never had wealth with her. Because in ancient period, women had no rights at all, including Lakshmi and Saraswati. But she was said to be goddess of wealth only to preserve wealth with the Brahmin and Banya without involving in production. Now, if a Dalit gets some ornament or some land, some wealth, the gods who have, see, Lakshmi will tell Vishnu, who normally sleeps on snakes and with a chakra in his hand. She will tell him that, look, here is some SC, ST, BC who got some wealth. Take care of him. So he leaves the chakra. Chakra goes there and cuts the head. So that is dharma. So the process is very systematic. And when this god sleeps on snakes as if he was very tired of killing people, and this woman has to keep pressing his feet. She never sleeps on snakes, poor woman. She is not supposed to sleep at all actually. She has to work all the time. So look at the mechanism of these symbols that they constructed. They themselves are said to have constructed a particular mode of consumption which should be pure and divine. When we organized a beef festival in Osmania University, all Hindu gods were very angry that day. They were hovering around Osmania University. And RSS, Vishwa Hindu Parishad came. There was some pitched battle. And the gods were defeated and they went away. But RSS was very angry. And these gods succeeded in stopping beef festival in JNU. Because no staff member of JNU came to participate in beef festival. They said, beef festival? Why should you have beef festival? Now most of these professors were beef eaters in Oxford, Cambridge, Harvard. But here they become pure vegetarians. Because that's how you have to appeal to the God. And some of them are communists, some of them are secular, some of them are Loyites. Every ite with the roots in the spiritual system were very angry with. So the Vishwa Hindu Parishad took it to the Delhi High Court. Judges were very angry. How can that beef eating takes place in JNU? Very sacred place. So he issued an order to police commissioner told the vice chancellor suspended 3 organizers. But they did not succeed in Osmania. So, this is the mechanism that the cultural, spiritual domains operate. Now the same mechanisms are deployed in election also. A poor Sudra, Narendra Modi, is converted into a vegetarian. So he converted whole Gujarat into vegetarian. So now after becoming Prime Minister, he has to convert the whole India into vegetarian. So see, if that vegetarianism is not coming, then there will be, gods will come. What is happening? So they will come, one with Gadha, one with Anjaneya will come along with them. All of them were beefarians in those days, if they existed. But now all of them were consciousness. Through consciousness, gods were converted into vegetarian. So what happens? In the realm of spirituality, if you control the consciousness, even of the Sudra, of Dalit or OBC, then you manage the mechanism of system in such a way that all other spheres can be taken care. Because you see, it is ultimately the God. Nobody can... no, it is easy to say in a central university or in even in Tinmurti or elsewhere that look, we are very secular. But there is a God hovering around. So if it is a Christian institute, Yehovah keeps hovering around, and Yehovah eats everything, of course. Or if it is a Muslim institute, Allah keeps hovering. If it is a Indian institute, only this land people keep coming around. So what happens in the whole structure is that notions of political theory, notions of economic theory, notions of social theory are constructed from the base of spirituality. And from spirituality they are taken into social realm. And the civil society that we talk about and the citizenship that we talk about are ultimately rooted in this spiritual justice or injustice, injustice. So, my last point, therefore, in this paper is the notion of justice encounters a crisis here. In India, justice always is in crisis, whether it is judiciary, whether it is politics, whether it is social sphere, justice is in crisis. Social justice cannot come into play until and unless the spiritual crisis is tackled. There is a spiritual crisis. And the whole notion of social justice cannot be operationalized unless the spiritual system is tackled. Now, it is in this broader contour, I feel when Ambedkar gave up Hinduism, having said that though I was born a Hindu, I will not die a Hindu, he became a Buddhist. Now, by becoming Buddhist, what he did is, the food producers, the shoemakers, the leather workers, the road sweepers, are connected to a god called Gautam Buddha. So this god does not treat production as pollution. This god treats that production is part of human life and spiritual life, social life. Therefore, whatever is his occupation, he can become a monk. He can interact with that god. Now, that god also exists in the form of an idol, no doubt. But the transformation from Hindu idols, day before on Times Now, when Narendra Modi said, we were responsible for giving Bharat Ratna to Ambedkar. To defend Narendra Modi, a Muslim lady from Gujarat was brought, some Farida Khan. She was defending Narendra Modi like anything. I said, Farida ji, why are you worshipping a idol called Narendra Modi? A Muslim is not supposed to worship idols. So today you are surrendering Ambedkar to him, tomorrow you seem to be surrendering Prophet Muhammad also to him. And then tomorrow Allah. So what will happen? So the question is, that is what Buddhism did. Then came Christianity in the first century. From first century to 1790, that is the year in which William Carey landed on this land, Christianity was thoroughly controlled by Brahmin converts with the same notion of spiritual is pollution. Production is pollution. Production is pollution. The same system exists in Kerala, Syrian Christians, Mathomas. So once the William Carey's structure came, production among tribals, Dalits began to be connected to Jesus. So that's an entirely different course. Now it is from there Mahatma Phule emerges. When he said that Bible must be taught in every school, he was speaking about the Bible of William Carey, not Bible of St. Thomas. So then came Islam. The first convert into Islam was Cheramal Perumal of Kerala, Shudra ruler, as a protest against the Nambudri Brahmin hierarchization and brutalization. The first mosque was built in 629. Since then, huge number of Sudras, backward classes today, Dalits, tribals, went into Islam. So that early 17th century to present, including Afghanistan, Pakistan, Bangladesh and present India, I think almost 50% of Indian subcontinent population has gone into Islam. And they got connected between production and God. So there is that fundamental issue there. Now the crisis is among the SC, ST, OBCs who are not at all converted as yet, who exist in the fold of either outside any religion. When I said I am not a Hindu, I am not a Christian now, I am not a Buddhist now, I am not a Muslim now, nor I am a Hindu. I am an OBC. There could be many like this. There are some who think that we are Hindus. But the question is whether they are, if Narendra Modi tomorrow becomes Prime Minister, he can become Prime Minister, but he can't become a priest in Tirupati temple. He can't become a priest in Vaishnava Devi temple. So you read that article which I wrote recently, Chaiwala and Boston Brahmins. What I said was, if Narendra Modi wants to establish a socially justifiable system, and if Chaiwala wants to become Prime Minister of the nation, his mother still is alive, she should make chai. Let Tirupati priests and Vaishnava Devi priests and all priests come, and if invited I will also go. We will drink chai made by his mother. If they drink the chai, then India becomes a human society. Right? After all, 95 years old, he has not given her anything, even though he became Chief Minister for 12-13 years. See, she is living in a hut. And his wife is, poor lady, we don't know whether she is living at all or not. She is a teacher somewhere. So, the disconnect between political system and spiritual system seems to be some sort of an apparent, but there is no disconnection. So in essence what happens, Narendra Modi sits as an idol in the Prime Minister position. Murli Manohar Joshi, Arun Jaitley, Sushma Swaraj and Swapan Das Gupta, who writes only about the West most of the time. They keep worshipping this idol called Narendra Modi. And then SC, ST, OBCs, when they ask for share in any system, they invite gods. They invite gods, adharma is taking place, please come. So tap, tap, tap. See, these gods are so powerful, 24/7 they can kill. There is no rest for them. Christian God works only for 6 days and 7th day he rests. Read the Genesis. He rests 7th day. Therefore, the Shabbat came. In Hinduism, there is no Shabbat. There is no holiday. 24 hours, 7 days, weapons. So the problem is, in this country, how would you have developed capitalism if wealth is buried underground by Banya businessmen? Now I want to, if I get some power, I want to go and dig out how much wealth is buried in the 22-storied building of this modern Banya, Ambani. There must, see, they always bury wealth. So, Banyas bury wealth. Some wealth they are giving Kejriwal because he is also Banya. Some wealth. Most of it is going to Narendra Modi and others, because he has given a lot of land and all that. But some they gave to Lohiya also, he was also Banya. Some they gave to Gandhi, he was also Banya. So they want to have one leader or other at each time. So, without telling us, some says I am Aam Aadmi, some says this and that, socialist. But ultimately Banya is Banya. So the process is there. And in the spiritual realm, there is buried wealth in one Kerala temple. 5 lakh crores wealth is buried. Instead of Chidambaram, if I become finance minister, first thing I will do is I dig out this and sell it off and construct industries, English medium schools. Because it is not in one temple. All over the country there is buried wealth. See, Banya life is such and Brahmin life is such, they don't believe even their wife, their son. Each one buries somewhere without telling the other. That's why it remains underground all the time. And they die. So, both in the temple, see this Somnath temple rubbish, these BJP, RSS people are talking. My simple OBC understanding is, in Somnath temple there was lot of wealth buried. Muhammad Gori came and dug it out, sold it and paid wages to the soldiers. Whether burying is good or putting it in the market is good. They say plundering. This plundering. What did he do plundering? Did he bury in some mosque or what? No, there is no such burying in Islam. He sold all that gold, paid the wages to the soldiers. So the whole problem today is India will not develop an advanced industrial country. As an advanced industrial country, Indian educational institutions will not produce original scientists, social scientists, so long as the productive people do not occupy them, whether through reservation or through violence tomorrow. Because to go for violence, there are big gods problem there. They have weapons. First, those weapons have to be removed. So, this is one. The second one is, what is the research that is happening in Indian universities? I call this research, most of them go abroad, study 10 books written by foreigners, write 11th book, which I call lift irrigation research. It is not from the field. So they now full-scale operation is, when I came here for fellowship, I was the first non-foreign PhD from a university which they never recognized called Usmania. And I said, how can you give fellowship to such a fellow? So it was Ravindra Kumar and Aksar who said that this fellow seems to have some sense. So they gave me. So this anti-colonialism, anti-imperialism, only living in imperial place. So this whole contradiction has to be resolved, and the contradiction does not appear to be contradiction because the spiritual base on which they are living is such. It does not allow them to see where there is a contradiction. So their mind is, very clean. Any adharma has to be dealt with. People need to be killed, that's all. It is natural. Reservation, no merit. Why say reservation and merit? Where is the common thing? As if without reservation, they have produced hundreds of Nobel laureates who have discovered aeroplanes, who have discovered telephones and cell phones. See, this is the problem. So what I feel is that unless we really critically look at the Hindu spiritual system and the unjust mechanisms against the very production itself that it constructed, and deploy a new language of social change, and work out Indian social science altogether on indigenous knowledge base, I think we will not be able to change our universities or knowledge institutions. So thank you. I'll stop. Let there be a lot of questions.